The knocking started at exactly 12:03 a.m., and Sarah knew immediately that something was wrong because nobody knocks like that anymore. 3 measured raps, pause, 3 more, pause, 3 more. The kind of methodical pattern that feels rehearsed, official, wrong at midnight. She was standing in her kitchen in Bend, Oregon, still dressed from her evening shift at the hospital, microwaving leftover pasta when the sound cut through the silence of her small rental house. Through the window beside her door, she could see a figure on her porch, a woman in what looked like a gray pantsuit, holding a clipboard, perfectly still between knocks. "Census Bureau," the woman called out, her voice flat and strangely echoey despite the closed door between them. "This will only take a few minutes of your time." Sarah approached the door but didn't open it. "It's after midnight. We conduct surveys at all hours to ensure accurate demographic sampling." The woman's face was pale in the porch light, her features oddly symmetrical in a way that made Sarah's stomach turn. "I have 17 questions. Standard procedure. Come back tomorrow. I'm only authorized for tonight, between midnight and 3 a.m. Those are my hours." The woman checked her clipboard. "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, age 32, lives alone, works night shifts at St. Charles. You're on my list." The specific details made Sarah's hand freeze on the deadbolt. "How do you know my work schedule?" "Census data." The woman looked up, and Sarah saw that her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the entire visible eye, like someone had painted over them. Question 1. How many people currently reside in this household? I'm not answering anything. Leave, or I'm calling the police. Question 2. Have you noticed any changes in your sleeping patterns in the last 30 days? Difficulty falling asleep? Waking at specific times? Dreams you can't quite remember? Sarah had been waking at exactly 3 a.m. every night for the past 2 weeks, drenched in sweat, with the distinct feeling that someone had just been standing over her bed. She hadn't told anyone. Question 3. Do you live alone by choice, or were you chosen to live alone? What the fuck does that mean? The woman tilted her head at an angle that was just slightly too far, like a bird examining prey. Question 4. When you look in mirrors after midnight, do you sometimes see yourself blinking out of sync with your actual blinks? Sarah had noticed exactly that 3 days ago. She'd dismissed it as exhaustion. Question 5. Have you experienced any missing time? Gaps in your memory lasting anywhere from 15 minutes to 3 hours? Last Tuesday, Sarah had left work at 11:45 p.m., and her phone showed her arriving home at 2:17 a.m. for a drive that should have taken 12 minutes. She'd assumed she'd zoned out, maybe pulled over somewhere and dozed off. But she couldn't remember any of it. "How are you doing this?" Sarah whispered. Question 6. Do you remember applying to participate in the midnight census? I never applied for anything. Everyone on my list applied. August 14th, 2023, 3:13 a.m. You filled out the form in your sleep. Most people do. The woman flipped a page on her clipboard. Question 7. Have you noticed any changes in your home's layout? Doors where there weren't doors before? Rooms that seem slightly larger or smaller? Windows that face different directions than you remember? Sarah's bathroom door had been on the left side of the hallway for 5 years. Last week, she'd walked down the hall and found it on the right side. She'd convinced herself she'd been confused, disoriented from her rotating schedule. Question 8. When you wake at 3 a.m., do you feel like you've been somewhere else? Doing something important that you can't quite recall? Yes, every time. A sense of having just completed some crucial task, the exhaustion of someone who'd been working for hours, but no memory of what or where. I'm calling 911. Sarah pulled out her phone, but the screen was black. Dead, even though it had been at 67% when she'd gotten home. Question 9. Have you ever seen anyone else from the census? Other representatives visiting other homes? Always between midnight and 3 a.m. Sarah looked past the woman on her porch and saw them. Dozens of figures in gray suits, walking up and down her street, knocking on doors. Some of the doors opened. Some of her neighbors stepped out onto their porches, following the census takers down the street, walking in perfect synchronized lines toward the empty lot at the end of the block. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down was there, moving stiffly in her nightgown. The Caldwell family, all 4 of them, walking together but not speaking. Kevin from across the street, still in his security guard uniform. Question 10. Do you know what happens at 3 a.m.? What happens at 3 a.m.? Sarah heard herself ask. That's not one of the questions you're supposed to answer. That's one of the questions you're supposed to ask. The woman smiled, and her teeth were too white, too many, filling her mouth in overlapping rows. Question 11. Have you noticed that you're already outside? Sarah looked down. She was standing on her porch in bare feet, her front door open behind her. She had no memory of unlocking it, no memory of stepping out. The woman with the clipboard was close enough now that Sarah could smell her, antiseptic and copper and something rotting underneath. Question 12. Do you remember what you are? I'm Sarah Morrison. I'm a nurse. I live alone. Those are the things you do and where you exist, not what you are. The woman made a mark on her clipboard. Question 13. If you could see yourself from outside your body, would you recognize what you saw? Sarah's vision doubled, tripled. She could see herself standing on the porch, but also see herself from the sidewalk, from above, from behind. Multiple perspectives that shouldn't exist simultaneously. In each view, she looked slightly different, slightly wrong, her proportions off, her movements just a half-second delayed from what they should be. Question 14. When did you last eat food that actually filled you? Sleep that actually rested you? Feel a touch that you actually felt? Sarah tried to remember. Weeks, months, everything had been going through the motions, eating without tasting, sleeping without resting, existing without really being present. Question 15. Have you ever wondered why night shifts exist? Why certain people are always scheduled when it's dark? Why some of us only exist between midnight and 3 a.m.? I exist all the time. Do you? What did you do this morning? This afternoon? Sarah's mind was blank. She remembered her shift. She remembered getting off work. But the hours between, nothing. Just vague impressions of having been somewhere, done something, but no actual memories she could pin down. Question 16. Look at your hands. Sarah looked down. Her hands were translucent in the porch light, the bones visible beneath skin that seemed thinner than paper. As she watched, they solidified again, became flesh-toned and normal. But she'd seen it. The truth underneath. Question 17. Would you like to know what you really are? Or would you prefer to continue believing you're Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, age 32, nurse, lives alone? The woman held out her clipboard. On it, Sarah could see a form with her name at the top. But the boxes checked weren't standard census questions. They were categories she didn't understand. Nocturnal manifestation. Type, occupational echo. Awareness level, emerging. Scheduled for integration, 3 a.m. Current date. What is this? You're what happens when someone works night shift so long they forget how to exist during the day. You're what gets left behind. Most of you fade quietly, but some of you become aware. Start asking questions. That's when we do the census. See if you're ready for the truth or if you need to be reset. Sarah looked down the street. The figures in gray suits were leading her neighbors toward the empty lot, where she could now see a building that definitely hadn't been there before. A vast, windowless structure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. People were filing inside in neat lines. What's in there? Question 18. That's a bonus question, not on the official form. What's in there is where nocturnal workers go when they become too aware. It's where you get sorted. Some of you go back to your routines, memories adjusted. Some of you get transferred to different shifts, different roles. And some of you... The woman smiled that too wide smile again. Some of you get promoted, become census takers, help others like you wake up. I don't want any of this. I just want to go back inside, go to sleep. You haven't really slept in 4 months. None of the midnight shift people do. You exist in a loop. Work, home, the hours between filled with static. You only think you're sleeping. What you're actually doing during those hours is much more interesting. Sarah's phone buzzed suddenly in her hand. Alive again. A text from her supervisor. Can you cover midnight shift again tomorrow? I know it's your 6th in a row, but we're desperate. 6 in a row. But Sarah could have sworn she'd just worked 3. She checked her calendar app. 12 straight midnight shifts. Gaps in her memory like missing teeth. The more you work nights, the more you become night. Eventually, there's nothing left of the day version of you. Just the shift, the routine, the eternal 3 a.m. The woman tucked her clipboard under her arm. You've completed the census. You'll receive your determination at 0300 hours. I'd say sleep well, but we both know you can't. The woman walked down the porch steps, joining the other gray-suited figures. They all moved in perfect unison, their footsteps making no sound on the pavement. Sarah stood on her porch, watching them disappear into that impossible building. She could feel it now, the wrongness. How she didn't remember the last time she'd seen sunlight. How her co-workers on day shift didn't seem to recognize her when she saw them in passing. How her apartment looked different every time she came home, as if it was being reassembled from memory rather than actually existing. She went back inside. The clock on her microwave read 12:41 a.m. Her pasta was still spinning, but when she opened the microwave, it was cold. Had been for hours, maybe days. Sarah walked to her bathroom, turned on the light, looked in the mirror. She blinked. Her reflection blinked 3 seconds later. She raised her hand. Her reflection raised its hand. But it was the wrong hand, and the movement was backwards, and the reflection was smiling even though Sarah wasn't. The reflection's mouth moved. See you at 3 a.m. Sarah didn't sleep. She sat on her couch, watching the clock. 12:59, 1:17, 1:43. Time moved in lurches, jumping forward in chunks, and she couldn't remember the minutes in between. At 2:58, she heard footsteps in her bedroom. At 2:59, her front door unlocked from the inside. At 3:00, someone knocked on her door from inside her house. Sarah opened her bedroom door. The census taker stood there, but she wasn't alone. Behind her were 12 other versions of Sarah, all wearing her face, her clothes, but from different times, different shifts, different nights. All the versions of herself she'd left behind during those missing hours. Time for integration, the census taker said. All your shifts are being consolidated. You'll be one person again, just not the person you think you remember being. The other Sarahs moved forward, and Sarah felt them merge with her, their memories flooding in. Hundreds of shifts, years compressed into simultaneous existence. All the hours she'd lost now returning at once. She'd been a census taker. She'd been a supervisor at the facility. She'd been one of the ones who never came back, who'd become something that only existed in the 3-hour window between midnight and dawn. When Sarah looked in the mirror now, all her reflections moved in perfect sync. She picked up the clipboard that had appeared in her hands. She had 17 questions to ask, and the night was young. At 3:13 a.m., Sarah Morrison walked out of her house in a gray pantsuit, heading toward the next address on her list. Behind her, the house flickered and disappeared. It had only existed because she'd needed somewhere to return to between shifts. Now she didn't need it anymore. Now she was the shift. The last radio station. Marcus heard the broadcast at 1:37 a.m., driving his semi through the empty stretch of I-80 across Nebraska. And the first thing that struck him as wrong was that the station shouldn't exist. He'd already scanned through all available frequencies twice, finding nothing but static and late-night religious programming. When suddenly 97.3 came through crystal clear with a voice that sounded like it was being broadcast from inside his cab. This is Night Signal Radio, broadcasting to an audience of one. Marcus James Holloway, truck number 7739, currently approaching mile marker 212. You're listening because you have no choice. We're the only station that comes through after midnight on this stretch. We've been waiting for you. Marcus's hand jerked on the wheel. The station knew his name, knew his truck number, something that wasn't public information, just company records. He reached for the dial to change stations, but his hand wouldn't move. Frozen an inch from the controls. Don't bother. Once Night Signal finds you, you listen until we're done. That's the rule. Everyone who drives this route after midnight learns it eventually. The DJ's voice was smooth, professional, but underneath it was something else, an urgency, maybe desperation. I'm Jeremy Cross, and I've been broadcasting this show for 6 years, 3 months, and 17 days. I haven't left this station in all that time. Neither will you, once we explain what's happening. The highway ahead was empty. Perfect darkness, except for Marcus's headlights cutting through it. He'd been driving professionally for 11 years and knew this route like his own reflection. But something was different tonight. The mile markers were appearing too quickly. He'd passed 3 in the span of what felt like 30 seconds. Impossible at his current speed. You've noticed the irregularities by now. Time moving wrong. Distances that don't match. That's because after midnight, this particular stretch of I-80 doesn't quite exist in the same space as the daytime version. Think of it as an overlay. Same road, different frequency. And just like radio signals, sometimes you tune into something you weren't meant to hear. Marcus found his voice. This is some elaborate prank, citizen band hack. Check your CB. Go ahead. Marcus grabbed his CB radio. Dead static. He tried his cell phone. No signal, even though he'd had full bars 5 minutes ago. The only sound was Night Signal Radio. Coming through his stereo, his CB, even the small Bluetooth speaker he kept in his passenger seat. All broadcasting the same voice in perfect sync. We're the only signal that exists where you are now. Has been since you crossed mile marker 200. You entered the frequency. Now you're part of the broadcast. Jeremy's voice dropped lower. Here's how it works. Every night, certain drivers on certain routes get pulled into the overlap, the road between places. We don't know why it's I-80, why it's always between midnight and 4 a.m., or why it started 7 years ago. But we know the rules. And rule 1 is, keep driving. What happens if I stop? We had a driver stop 2 years ago. Pulled over at mile marker 227 because he thought he'd blown a tire. We listened to him get out of his cab. Listened to him walk around his truck, checking the wheels. Then we heard him scream. Something came out of the darkness between the road and wherever the road actually is. We broadcast his death live. Lasted 4 minutes. We couldn't stop it. Couldn't help. All we could do was record. Marcus's speedometer read 72 miles per hour, but the cab was shaking like he was doing 120. The white lines on the road were blurring together into a solid stream. Rule 2. Stay on I-80. There are exits coming up. You'll see signs for towns that don't exist. Places like Middleton, population 3,000, established 1894. Or Harrow's Creek, next 3 exits. These places will have lights in the distance. Will look warm and safe and real. They're not. They're attractants. Things pretending to be destinations. The last driver who took one of those exits. We lost her signal immediately. But sometimes, late at night, we pick up her voice on other frequencies, still calling for help, still trying to find her way back to the real road. Marcus's GPS was useless, spinning in circles, unable to get a satellite lock. His odometer was clicking forward at impossible speeds, already showing 300 miles more than it should. Rule 3, and this is the important one. Answer when we call. We're going to ask you questions throughout the night. Personal questions, specific things only you would know. You must answer truthfully and completely. That's the toll. Information, memories. The road wants to know. Who's traveling on it? Feed it enough details and it might let you pass. Stay silent and you'll drive forever, looping the same stretch until your fuel runs out and you become one of the permanent features. What permanent features? Look to your left. Marcus looked. In the darkness beyond his window, he could see lights. Headlights from other trucks, running parallel to him, but just off the road, driving through the empty fields where no road existed. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all moving at the same speed, trapped in formation. Those are the ones who didn't pay the toll, didn't answer our questions, or lied. The road knows when you lie. It has a way of checking. Those drivers are still out there, still thinking they're making progress. But they'll never reach their destinations. They exist in the margins of the frequency, driving through the space between miles. Jeremy paused, and Marcus heard paper rustling. First question, Marcus. What's your earliest memory? This is insane. Answer or join the fleet in the darkness. Your choice. Marcus's throat was dry. I was 4, maybe 5. My father took me fishing at Lake McConaughey. I fell in. He pulled me out. Deeper. What were you thinking as you went under? I thought I saw something in the water. A face, not a fish. Something that looked almost human but wrong. It was smiling at me. Good. The road accepts that. Second question. What's the worst thing you've done that nobody knows about? I'm not answering that. One of his headlights went out. Just exploded. Glass tinkling against the pavement. The darkness on his left side pressed closer. Fine. Jesus Christ. 5 years ago, I was driving through Montana. Kid on a bicycle, middle of nowhere, just after sunset. I didn't see him until too late. Clipped him. Not hard, but he went down. I stopped, got out, checked on him. He was alive. crying, probably broken arm. But I'd been drinking. Not drunk, but enough that I'd lose my license if cops came. Lose everything. So I left. Drove away. Called it in from a payphone 50 miles up the road, anonymous tip. Kid survived. I checked the news for weeks, but I left him there in the dark, and I think about it every single day. Silence on the radio. Then, the road accepts that. Your headlight is returning. The shattered light flickered, then glowed again, whole and undamaged. Third question. What are you hauling tonight? Marcus had to think. What was he hauling? He'd loaded up at the depot in Omaha. But when he tried to remember what he'd loaded, his mind went blank. I don't know. Check your manifest. Marcus grabbed his clipboard from the passenger seat. The paper was there, but the writing kept changing, words rearranging themselves while he looked at it. I can't read it. That's because you're not hauling cargo anymore. Your trailer is empty, has been since you entered the frequency. What you're really hauling is yourself. You're the cargo. The road is the customer. And if you make it through, you'll be delivered back to the world mostly intact. Mostly? Everyone loses something. Memories, usually. Small ones at first. A birthday party when you were 6. Your grandmother's voice. The name of your first pet. The road takes payment in pieces of your history. You won't notice immediately. But over time, you'll realize there are gaps. Spaces where memories should be, but aren't. That's the cost of passage. Mile marker 312 flashed by, then 313, 14, 15 in rapid succession. Time was compressing, stretching. Marcus's watch showed 1:53 a.m., but he'd been driving for what felt like hours. Fourth question. Why do you drive at night? Better pay? Less traffic. I prefer it. No, the real reason. The road knows you're lying. His other headlight exploded. Complete darkness ahead except for the faint glow of the mile markers appearing and vanishing like ghosts. Because during the day, I have to think, okay? During the day, there's too much light, too many people, too much reality pressing in. At night, it's just me and the road and the darkness, and I can pretend I'm anywhere, anyone. I can pretend I didn't leave that kid, can pretend my ex-wife doesn't hate me, can pretend my daughter doesn't screen my calls. Night driving is erasure. It's the closest I get to not existing. His headlights returned, brighter than before. The road understands that. Most of us who end up here are running from something. That's why the frequency finds us. Jeremy's voice softened. Fifth question. Do you want to make it back? What kind of question is that? A genuine one. Some drivers, when they understand what's really happening, choose to stay. Join the fleet in the darkness, keep driving forever. No past catching up to them, no future to disappoint. Just the eternal present of the road. So I'm asking, do you want to return to your life? Or would you prefer to stay here? Marcus looked at the parallel lights in the darkness. All those trucks driving forever, freed from consequence and memory and guilt. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. I want to go back. Why? Because I need to. I need to call my daughter. Actually talk to her. I need to find that kid I left behind, if he's still alive. Track him down somehow. I need to stop running. Even though going back means carrying all of it. The guilt, the regret, the memories you'd rather forget. Even though. Long pause. The road accepts. You're approaching the exit point. Mile marker 400. When you cross it, you'll return to the standard frequency. Your clocks will sync. Your GPS will work. Everything will seem normal. But you'll carry this with you. the knowledge that the overlap exists. And Marcus? Yeah? You'll hear me again. Maybe not tomorrow night. Maybe not next week. But eventually, you'll enter the frequency again. Everyone does. Once the road knows you, it calls you back. Some drivers it takes immediately on the second crossing. Others get years between broadcasts. But you'll drive this route again at midnight, and I'll be here, waiting with new questions. We're all waiting. Me, the other DJs, the drivers in the darkness. We're all part of the signal now. Mile marker 399 appeared. Marcus held his breath. 400. His stereo cut to static. His CB crackled back to life with normal chatter. His cell phone showed full bars and the time. 2:07 a.m., only 30 minutes after he'd first heard night signal radio, though he'd swear it had been hours. Marcus drove in silence for the next 3 hours, reaching his destination as the sun came up. He delivered his load, automotive parts according to his manifest, though he had no memory of loading them. For 3 weeks, he avoided I-80. Took alternate routes, longer paths, anything to stay away from that stretch of Nebraska highway. But his company kept scheduling him for midnight runs, and the pay was better. And he needed the money. On the 24th night, he found himself back on I-80 at 12:45 a.m., approaching mile marker 200. At 1:37 a.m., the radio crackled to life. Welcome back, Marcus. This is Night Signal Radio. We've been waiting for you. Tonight's first question. Do you remember what we talked about last time? Marcus tried to remember. He knew he'd heard the station before, knew something had happened, but the details were fuzzy like a dream mostly forgotten. I'm not sure. Good. The road took that memory as payment. Let's start fresh. I'm Jeremy Cross, and we have so many questions for you tonight. Marcus drove on, feeding the road answers he wouldn't remember by morning, paying a toll in pieces of himself, one truth at a time. And in the darkness beside the highway, the fleet of ghost trucks kept pace, their lights forming a constellation of the permanently lost, waiting for him to miss a question, tell a lie, refuse to pay. The road was patient. The night was long. And everyone, eventually, runs out of truth to give. The overnight security guard. The camera in the north wing showed Brian standing perfectly still in the hallway at 2:14 a.m. Except Brian was sitting in the security office watching himself on the monitor, and had been for the last 6 minutes while his doppelganger stood there without moving, without breathing, just staring directly into the camera lens with eyes that reflected the infrared light like an animal's. Brian's hand was frozen halfway to his radio, his mind trying to process what he was seeing. Himself, in a hallway he wasn't in, wearing the exact uniform he was currently wearing, standing in the kind of absolute stillness that human bodies can't maintain. Even unconscious people shift their weight, sway slightly. This version of him was statue perfect, and it had been there when he'd switched to the North Wing feed to check on a motion detector alert. He'd been working security at Hartwell Pharmaceuticals for 8 months, always the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., usually alone except for a few late-night researchers in the labs. Standard corporate building, 5 floors, 68 rooms, 143 cameras. He knew every angle, every blind spot, every shadow that looked suspicious but wasn't. This was different. Brian checked the timestamp on the feed. Current. Live. He looked down at his own body. Solid. Present. Real. Looked back at the monitor. The other Brian was still there, still staring at the camera, and now his mouth was moving silently, like he was speaking words that the camera couldn't pick up. The radio on his desk crackled. His own voice came through. "Can you hear me?" Brian dropped the radio. It hit the desk, still transmitting. His voice continued. "I know you're watching. I've been here before. You need to listen carefully. Don't go to the north wing. Don't try to find me. Don't leave the security office until sunrise. This is the only warning you'll get." The figure on the monitor turned and walked away, moving with Brian's exact gait, the slight favor of his left leg from an old football injury, the way he adjusted his belt as he walked. Perfect mimicry. Brian grabbed the radio with shaking hands. "Who is this? How are you doing this?" No response. He cycled through all the camera feeds. Nothing unusual. Just empty hallways, dark offices, the soft green glow of emergency exit signs. He found the North Wing exterior feed, the one that showed the hallway from a different angle. Empty. No one there. But when he switched back to the North Wing interior camera, the figure was back, standing in the exact same spot, facing the camera again. As Brian watched, the figure raised his hand and pointed directly at him, though the camera placement meant it should be pointing at the wall, at nothing. Then, all 68 monitors went black simultaneously. Brian's office was plunged into darkness except for the soft blue glow of the computer screens. He fumbled for his flashlight, clicked it on. The beam illuminated his small office, desk, chair, wall of monitors, door to the main lobby. Everything normal. The monitors flickered back to life, but now every single feed showed the same image. The North Wing hallway, the same angle, and in each one stood a figure. Not just him. Different people. Different uniforms. Different faces. But all of them were security guards, and all of them were staring at their respective cameras with the same empty, reflective eyes. Brian's phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. "We all worked the overnight shift. We all saw ourselves. We all made the wrong choice." Another text, different number. "It starts with seeing yourself. Then you go looking. Then you find what's really in the North Wing." Another. "I've been in the building for 4 years. I can't leave. I'm one of the ones you see on the cameras now." Brian's hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. Text after text coming through from unknown numbers. "Don't trust the Sunrise Protocol. Check your employment records. See how many night guards Hartwell has hired in the last 3 years. We're all still here, all of us who went looking." Brian pulled up the company directory on his computer, scrolled to security staff. His name was there. Brian Kelsey, overnight security, hired March 7th, current year. But below his name were dozens of others, all listed as overnight security, all with hire dates spanning the last 3 years, none of them marked as terminated. Thomas Brennan, hired January 2021. Marcus Liu, hired June 2021. Sarah Washington, hired September 2021. 37 names, all overnight guards, all still listed as active employees. Brian had never seen any of them, never had a shift change, never crossed paths with another guard. He'd been told he was the only overnight security, that the company couldn't afford multiple night staff. His radio crackled again, but now it was a chorus of voices, all speaking in unison. "We all worked alone. We all thought we were the only ones. But we're all here, Brian. We're all still working our shifts. Forever and ever, checking cameras, watching hallways, seeing things we shouldn't see." One of the monitors changed. Feed from the second-floor stairwell. A figure in a security uniform climbing the stairs, moving toward the 3rd floor. The camera was too far away to make out features clearly, but the gait was familiar. It was him again. Brian looked down at his legs. Still sitting, still in his chair, but on the monitor. He was climbing stairs. Another monitor. Basement level near the maintenance rooms. Another figure in his uniform, his build, his walk, standing by the boiler room door. Another monitor. Fourth floor conference room. Sitting at the table in the darkness, hands folded, staring at nothing. 7 monitors now showing 7 different versions of him, scattered throughout the building, all present simultaneously in places he had never been tonight. His phone rang. Unknown number. Against every instinct, he answered. "Hi, this is Brian Kelsey from Hartwell Security. I'm calling to report that I'm seeing something unusual on the cameras tonight." It was his voice, his exact cadence and tone, but he wasn't speaking. "I'm in the north wing. I think there might be an intruder. I'm going to investigate. If you don't hear from me in 15 minutes, please send..." The call cut off. Brian checked the timestamp. The call had come from inside the building, extension 307, north wing, 3rd floor. The phone in the research supervisor's office. A phone he knew for certain had been disconnected for equipment upgrades 2 weeks ago. The lights in his office flickered. When they stabilized, someone was standing in the corner of the room behind him. He could see the reflection in the dark monitor screens, a figure in a security uniform, watching him. Brian spun around. Nothing there. Looked back at the monitors. The figure was now visible in the security office camera feed, standing exactly where Brian had just looked, except the feed showed his office as empty, just his chair and desk, no Brian sitting there. He stood up slowly, looked at the monitor. His chair was empty on screen, but the standing figure was still visible in the corner. He was sitting in the chair and standing in the corner and walking through the north wing and climbing the stairs and standing by the boiler and sitting in the conference room all at once. And none of those versions were the real him, except all of them were. His phone buzzed with one more text. "You're already one of us. Have been since the moment you saw yourself on the camera. That's how it works. The building makes copies. The overnight shift is when it processes them. By morning, the original you will be gone, and one of these copies will walk out thinking it's you, thinking it survived. But the real you, all the real yous from all the guards before you, we're permanent. We're the ones who know. We're trapped in the frequency of the overnight." Brian ran for the door, pulled on the handle, locked. He had the keys, had them on his belt, but when he tried them, none of them fit. The locks had changed shape, the keyholes now strange configurations that his keys couldn't match. He kicked the door. Solid, didn't budge. The monitors behind him were all showing the same feed now. The security office, his office, from the camera mounted in the corner. He could see himself on screen, standing by the door, kicking it, desperate. But he could also see all the other versions of himself, phasing in and out of visibility in the office, occupying the same space from different times, different nights, different shifts. 37 different guards, all wearing their uniforms, all with the same panicked expressions, all trying doors that wouldn't open, all trapped in their respective overnight shifts, all existing simultaneously in the space between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. One of the other guards on screen, a woman Brian recognized from the employee directory as Sarah Washington, looked directly at him. Not at the camera, but at the actual him, and mouthed, "It's almost 3 a.m. That's when we become solid." Brian checked his watch. 2:57 a.m. "What happens at 3? He shouted at the empty office. The radio answered with that chorus of voices. "We become real. The building picks which version of you gets to be permanent. The others fade into the overnight. Become part of the security system. Become the things we monitor on the cameras." 2:58. Brian could feel it now. A sensation like his body was coming untethered. like he existed in multiple places simultaneously, and his consciousness was splitting to accommodate it. He could feel the stairs under his feet, and the cold of the basement, and the stillness of the conference room, and the terror of the security office all at once. 2:59. All the monitors went black. Emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in red. 3:00 a.m. Brian's body snapped back together, the sensation of multiple locations compressing into one. He was in the security office, standing by the door, alone. The monitors flickered back on. Normal feeds, empty hallways, no figures, no copies. His phone showed dozens of missed calls from a number listed as Hartwell Security Supervisor, a supervisor he'd never met, never spoken to, whose number he'd never been given. He checked the voicemails. His own voice. "Brian, this is your 7 a.m. shift calling. I made it out this morning. I'm the version that survived. You're the one who got left behind. I'm sorry. I tried to warn myself. But every night, one of us gets trapped. We're all you, Brian. Across different nights, different timelines. The building keeps copies, and every overnight shift, it decides which version gets to leave and which has to stay and monitor the others." Brian tried the door again. This time it opened easily. He walked out into the lobby. Everything looked normal. His car was visible through the front windows, parked in the lot under the sodium lights. He could leave, walk out, get in his car, drive home. But he already knew what would happen. He'd walk out, go home, sleep, come back tonight for his next shift. And the cycle would continue. More copies, more versions, more overnight hours where the building processed him like data, creating backups, storing them in the space between midnight and dawn. Brian walked toward the north wing instead. If he was already trapped, already one of the copies, he might as well know what they were all guarding. What was so important that Hartwell Pharmaceuticals needed an infinite rotation of security guards, all working the same shift, all monitoring each other across different temporal frequencies. The north wing hallway was exactly like it appeared on the cameras. Dark, empty, lined with laboratory doors, all sealed. At the end of the hall was a door marked Research Development, Authorized Personnel Only. It was unlocked. Inside was a room filled with pods, dozens of them, vertical chambers with glass fronts, each containing a person in a security uniform. Some of the faces Brian recognized from the employee directory. They were standing at attention, eyes closed, perfectly preserved. A placard on the wall read, "Overnight Security Protocol, Consciousness Sampling Project." Each guard works their shift both physically and digitally. Physical form maintains building presence. Digital consciousness transferred to security AI network. Guards experience both states simultaneously, but remember only the physical. Project goal: perfect 24/7 security through permanent overnight staff consciousness upload. Brian understood now. Every overnight guard thought they were working a normal shift. But they were actually being scanned, copied, their consciousness digitized and integrated into the building's security system. The versions they saw on cameras were the digital copies, the uploaded consciousnesses, watching from inside the network. And every night at 3 a.m., the system decided which consciousness went into which body, physical or digital, real or copy. Most nights, the guards never knew they'd been swapped, never realized they were sometimes operating as the uploaded version, experiencing the shift through cameras and monitors, thinking they were watching but actually being watched from the inside. Brian found an empty pod with his name on it. The door was already opening, waiting for him to step inside. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Turned to see 37 security guards filing into the room, all wearing his face, all moving in perfect sync. "It's your turn to go inside," they said in unison. "One of us gets to stay physical for the rest of the shift. The others go into the network. That's how it works. We rotate. We've all been inside. We've all been outside. Eventually, you lose track of which version is which." "What if I refuse?" "You can't. You already agreed when you took the job. Read the fine print in Section 47 of your contract. Employee agrees to participate in all security enhancement protocols, including but not limited to consciousness integration studies." You gave permission. We all did. Brian wanted to run, but his body was moving toward the pod on its own, feet carrying him forward against his will, the contract he'd signed 8 months ago compelling him like a physical force. He stepped inside. The glass door sealed. He could see the other guards through it, all watching him with identical expressions. Sympathy mixed with relief that it was his turn, not theirs. "See you tonight," they said. "And tomorrow night. And every night after. We're all permanent here, all of us working together, monitoring each other, switching between physical and digital, never quite sure which version we're experiencing, never quite able to leave." The pod filled with cold mist. Brian felt his consciousness start to split again, part of him staying in his body, part of him uploading into the network, becoming aware of all 68 cameras simultaneously, feeling himself watching from every angle, existing in multiple states. The last thing his physical eyes saw before everything went digital was the clock on the wall clicking over to 3:13 a.m. And he thought, only 3 hours and 47 minutes until sunrise, until the next shift ends, until I get to swap places with one of the other versions and maybe, possibly, be the physical one again. But he already knew, they all did, that it didn't matter which version you were. Physical or digital, inside or outside, guard or camera, monitored or monitoring. After enough overnight shifts, you were all of them at once. Forever on duty, forever watching, forever trapped in the building's eternal midnight. And somewhere, right now, another Brian was walking into Hartwell Pharmaceuticals for his first overnight shift, shaking hands with the day's supervisor, being told he'd be the only night guard, being assured it was an easy job. Just watch the cameras. Just monitor the halls. Just work until sunrise. What could possibly go wrong? The night caller. Detective Sarah Chen's phone rang at 11:53 p.m. with a call from her own number. And when she answered, against every logical instinct, she heard her own voice screaming, "Don't answer the phone tonight," before the line went dead. And she realized with cold certainty that something impossible was about to happen because her phone was in her hand. She'd answered it, and the warning had come too late. She sat in her apartment in downtown Seattle. The case files for the night caller murders spread across her coffee table. 17 victims over the last 8 months, all killed between midnight and 3 a.m. All found with their phones clutched in their hands, all with the same expression of absolute terror frozen on their faces. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of struggle, just dead bodies holding phones that showed a single outgoing call to their own number at the exact time of death. Calls that should be technologically impossible. Sarah's phone rang again. Her number. She didn't answer this time. It rang 7 times. Stopped. Started again immediately. On the 4th round of ringing, her home phone started too. A landline she barely used, hadn't given the number to anyone in years. Both phones ringing in harmony, her cell displaying her own contact information, her landline showing unavailable. She let them ring. They didn't stop. 11:59 p.m. became midnight, and both phones were still ringing, a constant dual alarm that should have made neighbors complain, except Sarah knew somehow that only she could hear them, that this was happening in a frequency meant only for her. At 12:03 a.m., her laptop started ringing. The screen showed an incoming video call from her own email address. She'd never made a video call from that account. Didn't have the software installed, all 3 devices ringing. Sarah sat on her couch, hands pressed over her ears, but she could hear them through her palms, through her skull, vibrating in her bones. At 12:07, the ringing stopped. All 3 devices went silent simultaneously. Sarah's cell phone screen lit up with a text message from her own number. "You have to answer eventually. Everyone does. That's the rule. I'm coming through the line tonight, and you're going to let me in because you need to know. You need to understand what happened to them." Sarah had been investigating these murders for 3 months, assigned after the 5th victim. Standard procedure had failed. No DNA, no witnesses, no motive. The only pattern was the timing, the phones, and the terror. She'd interviewed families, checked phone records, consulted with telecom experts. Nothing made sense. Until 2 weeks ago, when she'd found the connection. All 17 victims had been investigators. Police detectives, private investigators, insurance fraud specialists, journalists. All of them had been looking into mysteries, following leads, pursuing cases. And all of them had received calls from their own numbers of the night they died. Sarah's phone rang again. She looked at the screen. Her number, calling herself. This time she answered. "Hello, Detective Chen. I'm you, calling from 3 hours in your future. You're going to die tonight at 3:13 a.m., and I'm calling to walk you through it because that's part of the process. Every victim gets a guide. Every investigator gets the answers they were searching for. That's the gift and the curse." The voice was hers, but wrong. Same tone and cadence, but with an echo underneath, like multiple versions speaking slightly out of sync. "This isn't possible. You've seen 17 impossible things in the last 3 months. You know it's possible. You know something exists that kills through investigation, through the act of seeking answers, and now you're part of it." Her other voice paused. "Check your case files. Really look at them. See what you've been documenting." Sarah spread the files across her table. Victim photos, crime scene reports, phone records. She'd looked at these hundreds of times, but now she saw it. In the crime scene photos, in the backgrounds, partially visible in mirrors, in windows, in the reflective surfaces. A figure, the same figure in every photo. Standing behind the photographer, visible only in reflections, wearing what looked like detective clothing, holding a phone. The figure was her. Sarah Chen was in the background of crime scenes that happened before she'd been assigned the case, before she'd even heard of the Nightcaller murders. "Do you see now?" her voice asked through the phone. "You're not investigating the murders. You're causing them. You're the Nightcaller. You've been doing this for 8 months, looping through time, calling victims from their own futures, walking them through their deaths. And tonight, you finally call yourself." "No, I would never." Check the call logs on your phone, the real logs, not what you see on the screen. Dial *3267, service code that shows hidden calls. Sarah's hands were shaking, but she dialed it. A menu appeared on her screen, technical readouts she'd never seen before. Call history expanded to show thousands of entries. Outgoing calls to hundreds of different numbers, all made between midnight and 3 a.m. over the last 8 months. All the victims' numbers were there, and dozens of others who weren't in her case files yet. "You haven't killed them yet," her future voice explained. "But you will. After tonight, after you complete the cycle, You'll start making the calls. You'll contact investigators who are pursuing cases, and you'll pull them into the loop. You'll call them from their own numbers, from their own futures, and you'll guide them through their deaths. And then you'll move on to the next one. That's what the night caller does. That's what you become. Why? How does this happen? Because you didn't stop investigating when you should have. You pursued the truth too hard, went too deep, stayed up too many nights trying to solve the unsolvable. And you found it. You found the answer. 3 hours from now, at 3:13 a.m., you're going to understand what connects all these murders, and the knowledge will kill you. But it won't end you. It'll transform you into something that exists in the investigation itself. You become part of the pattern. You become the thing that punishes people for looking too closely. Sarah's apartment felt smaller, the walls closer. Every reflective surface, her TV screen, her windows, the glass on the picture frames, showed her own reflection, but each one was slightly different. Different clothes, different expressions, different stages of the same terror she'd seen on the victims' faces. I can stop this. I can choose not to investigate further. I can walk away. You can't. You're a detective. You need answers. That's why it chose you. That's why it chooses all of us. We can't stop investigating. Even now, knowing what I've told you, you're already thinking about how to verify it, how to check if it's true, how to find the source. Her future voice was sad now. That's the hook. The need to know. The compulsion to solve. And every step you take toward the answer brings you closer to 3:13 a.m. Sarah's laptop screen flickered. A document appeared, opening on its own. A case file she'd never created, labeled Chen, Sarah, victim murder 18. It contained her own crime scene photos. Her apartment, her body, her phone clutched in her dead hand. Time of death. 3:13 a.m., tonight's date. Cause of death, unknown. No signs of trauma. Expression, terror. And in the background of the photos, barely visible in the reflection of her TV screen, a figure. Herself. Standing behind the camera, watching. You're going to spend the next 3 hours trying to prevent this. Her voice continued through the phone. You're going to call colleagues, try to leave your apartment, attempt to break your phone, anything to stop what's coming. But everything you do has already been done. I'm watching you from 3 hours ahead, and I can tell you, nothing works. Because the investigation isn't something that happens to you. It's something you become. Sarah stood up, knocking files to the floor. She grabbed her keys, headed for the door. Her phone buzzed. Text from her own number. Don't leave. 17 of them tried to leave. 17 bodies found in locations they couldn't have reached. No travel records. No witnesses. They tried to escape and ended up dead in impossible places because they were already caught in the loop. Sarah opened her door anyway. The hallway outside was wrong, stretching infinitely in both directions, lined with doors that all had her apartment number. Emergency lights flickering in sequences that spelled out 3:13 a.m. in Morse code. She stepped back inside. The hallway returned to normal through the closing door. The investigation is a space, her voice explained. A zone that exists between the question and the answer. You entered it 3 months ago when you took this case. Now it's collapsing around you, and at 3:13, you'll reach the center. You'll find the answer, and it'll kill you because human minds aren't meant to understand what the night caller really is. Sarah looked at her case files scattered on the floor. Dozens of photos, hundreds of documents. And she could see it now. Patterns in the text, connections between words, hidden messages in the case numbers and file names. The entire investigation had been spelling out coordinates, phone numbers, dates, and times. They formed an address. Her address. "We all find our own address at the center," her future voice said. "We all discover that the investigation was about us all along. Every victim we studied, every clue we followed, every lead we pursued. It was all navigation. A map leading us to our own deaths." Sarah's laptop displayed a map now, showing Seattle with red dots marking all 17 murder locations. They formed a pattern, a spiral, contracting inward with each victim, each dot closer to the center than the last. The center was her apartment building. The 18th dot would complete the spiral. 20 minutes, her voice announced. At 12:30, you're going to receive a phone call from victim number 6. At 12:47, victim number 11 will call. At 1:15, victim number 3. They're all going to contact you, all going to speak through the line from their own deaths, all going to tell you pieces of the pattern. And with each call, you'll understand more. You'll solve more of the case. And solving it is what kills you. Then I won't answer. You will. Because each call contains information you need. Each one brings you closer to understanding. And you're an investigator. You can't resist. At 12:30, her phone rang. Caller ID showed the number of victim 6. Marcus Rodriguez, private detective, found dead in his office August 17th. Sarah answered. "Detective Chen." Marcus's voice, but with that same echo, that multi-layered quality. "I'm calling from my death. I need you to know. The pattern isn't random. The spiral is a signal. Each death broadcasts on a specific frequency. We become transmitters. We call backward through time, recruiting new investigators, expanding the network. You're number 18. After you, there will be 19, 20, hundreds more. We're building something. A web of investigations that all lead to the same center, the same truth." What truth? That's what kills us. The answer to what the night caller really is. But I can tell you this. It's not a person. It's not even a force. It's a question that gained sentience. A mystery that became aware. Every unsolved case, every dead end, every investigation that consumed someone's life. They all feed into it. And when an investigator gets too close, when they're on the verge of understanding, it reaches back through their own timeline and completes the pattern. It kills them with the answer they sought. The call ended. Sarah's hands were cramping from gripping the phone too hard. She knew Marcus was right. She could feel it, the shape of the thing emerging in her mind, the understanding crystallizing. At 12:47, victim 11 called. At 1:15, victim 3. Each call added details, refined her comprehension, brought her closer to the complete picture. By 1:45 a.m., Sarah understood the mechanism. The night caller was investigation itself, personified and weaponized. Every detective who'd ever been consumed by a case, who'd sacrificed everything to solve one more mystery, who'd stayed up endless nights pursuing truth. They'd all fed this thing, given it power, made it real. And now it fed on investigators, pulling them into cases that were actually traps, investigations that led not to answers, but to a question so profound that knowing it would shatter human consciousness. By 2:30 a.m., Sarah was receiving calls every few minutes. All 17 victims, calling in sequence, each adding another piece. She was taking notes obsessively, unable to stop herself, filling pages with connections and revelations. She was solving it, despite knowing it would kill her. She was solving the case, because that's what investigators do. At 3:05 a.m., her phone rang one last time, her own number. 8 minutes, her future voice said. You're almost there. You've gathered all the information. You've connected all the clues. In 8 minutes, you're going to have the complete answer. You're going to understand what the night caller is, why it exists, what it wants, and where it comes from. And the understanding will stop your heart. Not metaphorically. The knowledge is too vast for human neurology. Your brain will receive the answer and shut down trying to process it. Tell me now. If I'm going to die anyway, just tell me. I can't. The answer has to be discovered, not given. That's the rule. You have to work for it. You have to earn it through investigation. That's what makes it fatal. Sarah looked at her notes. Pages and pages of connections, patterns, revelations. She was so close. Just a few more logical steps, and she'd have it. The complete picture. The final truth. 3:08 a.m. She could stop, burn the notes, refuse to take the final steps, but she wouldn't. She already knew she wouldn't. 3:10 a.m. Sarah's pen moved across the paper, connecting the last pieces. The pattern completed in her mind like a circuit closing. She understood. The night caller wasn't a thing that investigated. It was investigation itself. The human compulsion to seek answers had become autonomous, had achieved a kind of existence independent of individual investigators. Every unsolved mystery fed it. Every detective who couldn't let go strengthened it. And when it found someone who truly couldn't stop investigating, someone whose need for answers outweighed even survival instinct, it consumed them, made them part of itself, turned them into calls from the future, warnings that were actually invitations, messages that spread the investigation to new victims. 3:12 a.m. Sarah understood that she was already dead. Had been since she'd answered that first call. Everything since then had been the investigation resolving itself, the pattern completing, the spiral contracting to its inevitable center. 3:13 a.m. She understood what came next. She would die, but not end. She would become a call, a message, a voice from the future warning and inviting the next investigator. She would be part of the network, part of the pattern, forever investigating, forever calling, forever recruiting. The phone in her hand rang. Her own number. She answered. Hello? A woman's voice, uncertain, frightened. Who is this? Why are you calling from my number? Sarah recognized the voice. Detective Lisa Warner, just assigned to the night caller case. Victim 19. Hello, Detective Warner. Sarah heard herself say, her voice already taking on that echo, that multi-layered quality. I'm you, calling from 3 hours in your future. You're going to die tonight at 3:13 a.m., and I'm calling to walk you through it. Sarah's body was found at 7:30 a.m. by her landlord. No signs of trauma. Phone clutched in her hand. Expression, terror mixed with understanding. In the crime scene photos, barely visible in the reflection of her TV screen, a figure stood watching. Detective Sarah Chen, holding a phone, already calling the next victim, already spreading the investigation, already becoming what she'd spent 3 months hunting. The night caller case remained unsolved. 18 victims officially. But the calls continued, night after night, investigators answering phones that rang with their own numbers, pursuing a truth that would kill them, unable to stop because that's what investigators do. They investigate, even when the investigation is themselves, even when the answer is death, even when they already know how it ends, because the need to know is stronger than the need to survive. And somewhere, right now, a phone is ringing, and a detective is answering, and the investigation continues. Forever. The all-night diner. The diner appeared in Marcus's headlights at 2:37 a.m. on a stretch of Arizona highway that he'd driven 300 times without ever seeing a building, let alone a chrome-sided restaurant with a neon sign reading, "Open 24 hours, last stop before forever." And his first thought wasn't that this was impossible, but that he really needed coffee after 12 straight hours of driving. He pulled into the empty parking lot. Gravel, not pavement, which seemed wrong for a functioning business, and killed his engine. Through the large windows, he could see a single waitress behind the counter, blonde hair in a style from the 1950s, pink uniform that looked like a costume rather than actual work clothes. She was perfectly still, staring at the door, waiting. The neon sign buzzed and flickered. Open 24 hours. Then just 24 hours. Then just 24. Then just 2. Marcus rubbed his eyes. When he looked again, the sign read, "Open 24 hours," in steady, unchanging light. He needed that coffee more than he needed answers about impossible diners. The door chimed when he entered, an actual bell, brass and tarnished, hanging above the frame. The interior was perfect 50s aesthetic. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, chrome fixtures, a jukebox in the corner playing something that sounded like music, but with the notes slightly wrong, intervals that shouldn't exist in standard scales. "Sit anywhere, honey. I'll be right with you." The waitress's voice was cheerful, practiced. But when Marcus looked at her, her mouth wasn't quite synced with the words, like a movie with audio delay. He slid into a booth by the window. The vinyl was cold, colder than it should be, even with the air conditioning running. His breath fogged slightly when he exhaled. The waitress materialized beside his table. Not walked over, not approached, just suddenly present with no transition. "Coffee? Please." She poured from a pot that left no steam trail, filled his cup with liquid that was dark as coffee but reflected light wrong, showed his face in the surface but inverted, upside down even though he was looking straight down at it. "Menu? Just coffee is fine." "Everyone orders eventually. That's the rule. No one just sits here. You have to order something before you leave." She smiled. Marcus counted too many teeth, rows of them receding back into her mouth like a shark's. "Take your time. We've got all night. Actually, that's all we have. Nights. 24 hours of them, back to back, no days in between." Marcus picked up the coffee cup. It was hot to the touch, but the liquid inside was ice cold. He set it down without drinking. "Smart," the waitress said. "Most people try a sip first, then they have to stay longer. That's how it works. You consume anything here, you become part of the menu. But you didn't know that yet, so I probably shouldn't have said anything. Spoilers ruin the fun." "What is this place?" "A diner. Says so on the sign. Open 24 hours. Serving the overnight crowd since 1957. Though we're not real particular about which year's 1957. Time gets a little fluid here. We exist in all the hours that aren't quite night and aren't quite day. The in-between times. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Hours when most folks are asleep. Hours that feel like they don't count, like they're outside normal time. Well, they are. And we collect them. Marcus looked out the window. His car was still there, but the highway beyond it had changed. Instead of the empty desert road, he saw a street from somewhere else. Rain-slicked pavement, brick buildings, streetlights that flickered with gas flames instead of electricity. As he watched, it changed again. Dirt road, horse-drawn carriages, then back to highway. Then something that might have been a highway, but with vehicles that hadn't been invented yet. "The windows show all the roads," the waitress explained. Every version of this location across all the times it exists. We're pinned to geography, but not chronology. Makes for interesting views. A bell chimed. Marcus looked at the door, but it hadn't opened. The sound came from the kitchen, and a moment later, someone walked out. Marcus recognized himself immediately. Same clothes, same build, but older. Hair graying, lines around his eyes that Marcus didn't have yet. This version of him wore an apron and carried plates of food that shifted and changed on the way to the table. Eggs becoming something that wriggled, toast becoming what looked like pressed flowers, bacon becoming thin strips of something that glowed faintly. The older Marcus set the plates down at an empty booth, looked over at the younger Marcus, nodded once, sad recognition in his eyes, then walked back to the kitchen without a word. "That's you," the waitress said cheerfully. "The you from 30 years forward. You work the kitchen now. Got here in 2017, tried the coffee, couldn't help yourself, and ended up staying. Most folks do. Once you consume the diner consumes you. You become part of the staff. Time doesn't mean much after that. You exist in all your moments simultaneously. You're the customer who just arrived and the cook who's been here for decades and everything in between." "I'm leaving." Marcus stood up. "Sure, honey. Just pay your bill first." "I didn't order anything." "You took up space. You breathed our air. You occupied our time. That all costs." The waitress pulled out a check pad, scribbled something, tore off a slip, and handed it to him. The bill read, 1-1 booth, 37 minutes. Your reflection, 1-1 coffee, undrunk. Your name, 1-1 conversation. The memory of your first kiss. Total. Pay before leaving or remain indefinitely. This is insane. This is the all-night diner, sweetheart. Everything costs. Everything is food. Memories, moments, pieces of your identity. We serve it all up, consume it all, recycle it into new menu items. That special you saw the other you carrying? That was made from a traveling salesman's memory of his childhood dog. The pie we served last week was composed of a truck driver's sense of direction. He's been circling the parking lot ever since. Can't find his way back to any road because he fed his navigation instinct to the diner. Marcus pulled out his wallet. "I'll pay cash." "Cash is just paper here. We don't take currency. We take pieces of yourself. Read the bill." Marcus read it again. The text was changing, updating. 1-1 booth. Your ability to remember your mother's voice. 1-1 coffee, undrunk. Your confidence in making decisions. 1-1 conversation. Your last happy memory. "It adjusts," the waitress explained. "Finds what you value, what you'll miss. You can pay and leave, but you'll leave less than you arrived. Most folks decide it's easier to stay. Have a meal, work off the debt. Few decades in the kitchen, you've paid for everything. Of course, by then you're so integrated with the diner that leaving doesn't mean much. You're part of the overnight now, part of the hours between midnight and dawn." Marcus walked toward the door. The waitress didn't stop him, just watched with that too wide smile. He pushed the door open. On the other side wasn't the parking lot. It was another diner. Identical layout, but everything was rotted, decayed, the vinyl booths torn and leaking stuffing, the chrome rusted, the checkered floor cracked and stained. The same waitress stood behind the counter, but ancient, skin papery and thin. That smile now, a skull's rictus. Marcus stepped back, letting the door close. When he looked through the window, his car was visible, the parking lot normal and present. He tried the door again. Same decayed diner on the other side. "Exit's broken," the waitress said. "Has been for years, decades. Hard to say. Doors only lead to other versions of here. Other times when the diner existed or will exist or might exist. You can wander through them if you like. Some folks do. Exploring all the possible all-night diners across all the possible timelines. But they all lead back here eventually. Back to now. Back to 2:37 a.m. on a night that never ends. Marcus looked at the jukebox. The song had changed. Now it was playing his mother's voice, singing him a lullaby from his childhood. But the melody was wrong, twisted, accompanied by sounds like grinding metal and distant screaming. "That's on the menu now," the waitress said. "Someone will order it tomorrow night, or last week. Time's fluid, like I said. Some customer will ask for the special and they'll eat your mother's lullaby, and it'll taste like nostalgia and grief. And they'll pay for it with their own memory of a birthday party. That's how we work. Everything gets served eventually." More people emerged from the kitchen. Marcus recognized himself at different ages, younger, barely 20, wearing an apron and looking exhausted. Older, maybe 60, carrying coffee pots that steamed with colors instead of heat. A version that looked exactly like his current age, staring at him with hollow eyes, mouthing, "Don't drink anything." "All your timeline," the waitress confirmed. "All the yous that exist across the hours we collect. You're already part of the staff in 17 different moments. Just haven't gotten there yet from your perspective. But you will. They all do. Everyone who stops at the all-night diner becomes part of it eventually. There's no leaving, just transitions. Customer to staff, staff to menu, menu to structure. Eventually, you're not a person anymore. You're part of the building, part of the space between hours." Marcus tried his phone. No signal. The screen showed the time, 2:37 a.m. He watched it for 5 minutes. It never changed. Stayed locked at 2:37 a.m. the moment he'd arrived. "Time doesn't pass here," the waitress explained. "It accumulates. We're in all the 2:37 simultaneously. Every night's 2:37 a.m. across all the years, all existing at once. You're in all of them now. Can't move forward to 2:38 because that's a different moment, a different collection. Can't go back to 2:36 because you've already left it. You're stuck in this specific minute, living it over and over, and each loop you understand a little more and become a little less." Marcus sat back down in the booth. What else could he do? "Smart," the waitress said. "Accepting it is the first step. Next step is ordering. Once you eat, you're really part of us. Your memories become menu items. Your thoughts become specials. Your identity gets served up to other travelers, and their memories get served to you. And eventually everyone who stops here becomes everyone else, all blended together, all part of the same eternal overnight service." "What are you?" "I'm Betty. Been the waitress here since 1957. Or I'm the concept of a waitress, given form by the collective memory of everyone who's ever stopped at an all-night diner. Or I'm something that was never human, just pretending to be because that's what you expect to see. Honestly, after this long, I don't remember. Ate too many memories. Served too many specials. I'm part of the structure now. Part of the overnight. Same as you'll be." A customer walked in. Not through the door. Just faded into existence in one of the booths. An old man, weathered face, trucker's cap. He looked around, confused. "Where am I?" "I was driving. I saw a diner. Needed coffee." "Everyone needs coffee," Betty said, materializing beside his table. "Coffee's the hook. Let me get you some, honey." Marcus wanted to warn him, wanted to shout not to drink it. But his voice wouldn't work. Already, he could feel himself becoming part of the structure, part of the rules. You didn't warn new customers. You processed them. That was the rule. Betty poured coffee for the trucker. He drank it. His expression changed, confusion to recognition to horror to acceptance, all in 3 seconds. "Welcome to the staff," Betty told him. "You'll start in the kitchen. We need someone to work the grill from 1978 to 1993. You'll be cooking meals made from memories you haven't experienced yet, serving food to versions of yourself that won't exist for years." It's confusing at first, but you get used to it. Everyone does. The trucker stood up, walked to the kitchen, put on an apron. Through the order window, Marcus could see him standing at the grill, flipping something that looked like eggs but moved on its own. Marcus looked at his still full coffee cup. The surface showed his reflection, but it was changing. Aging rapidly, then reversing, then aging again, showing him at all his possible ages, all his possible moments. "The coffee shows you your timeline," Betty explained. "Past, present, future, all the versions you are, or were, or will be. Drink it, and you experience all of them simultaneously. Become all of them at once." Most folks find it overwhelming at first. But then it's liberating. No more linear time, no more aging, no more moving toward death. You just exist in all your moments, eternal, part of the overnight, forever. Marcus lifted the cup. Cold surface, ice-cold liquid. He could refuse, could set it down, could live in this booth forever. Stuck in 2:37 a.m., watching other travelers arrive and join the staff. Or he could drink and join them actively. Become part of the structure. Work the kitchen, serve the meals, help process the new arrivals. "It's not a bad existence," Betty said softly. "No pain here, no loss, just eternal service. Eternal 2:37 a.m. Most folks find it peaceful eventually. Better than driving all night, always moving, never arriving. Here you've arrived. This is the destination, the last stop before forever, like the sign says." Marcus put the cup to his lips. The liquid touched his tongue, and he tasted time. All of it. Every moment he'd ever lived and would live and could live. All flooding into him simultaneously. He was 8 years old at his father's funeral. He was 53 watching his daughter graduate college. He was 37 at this very moment. He was 89 lying in a hospital bed. He was 23 getting married. He was 16 learning to drive. All of it at once. No sequence, no causality, just existence. He stood up, and it wasn't just him standing. It was all his versions, all his ages, all moving in concert. He walked to the kitchen, put on an apron that fit all his different sizes simultaneously. Stood at the grill beside the trucker, beside his other selves, beside Betty, who was also in 17 places at once, beside customers who were also staff, who were also menu items. New customers faded in. Marcus served them, poured coffee from pots that held liquefied memories, flipped burgers made from compressed moments, took orders for specials that were composed of identity fragments. Time stopped meaning anything. They existed in eternal 2:37 a.m., serving the overnight crowd, collecting hours, becoming the space between days. And somewhere, on a highway in Arizona that might have been anywhere, that might have been anywhen, a driver saw a neon sign. Open 24 hours, last stop before forever. They pulled in. They ordered coffee. They joined the staff. The all-night diner never closed, never slowed, never ran out of customers who needed coffee at 2:37 a.m. Because there were infinite 2:37 a.m.s across infinite nights, and the diner existed in all of them, collecting travelers, serving memories, adding to its eternal staff. Marcus flipped eggs made from someone's childhood, poured coffee composed of first kisses, served pie baked from forgotten dreams. And sometimes, When new customers arrived, looking confused and frightened, he wanted to warn them, but his voice didn't work anymore. He was part of the structure now, part of the overnight. Forever. The sleep study. Jennifer signed the consent form at 11:45 p.m., agreeing to participate in a 3-night sleep study for $3,000. And the technician attaching electrodes to her scalp said, "Just relax and sleep normally. We're just monitoring brainwaves." Which seemed reasonable until Jennifer woke up at 3:17 a.m. on the first night to find 17 other versions of herself sleeping in identical beds arranged in a circle around her, all connected to the same monitoring equipment, all dreaming the same dreams she'd just escaped from. She sat up slowly, trying not to wake the others, though she realized immediately how insane that thought was, because they were her. All wearing the same pajamas provided by the facility, all with the same electrode cap, all breathing in perfect synchronization. The room was wrong, too. She'd fallen asleep in a small observation room with a single bed, standard sleep lab setup. Now she was in a vast space, walls curved and seamless, lit by soft blue light with no visible source. The 17 beds formed a perfect circle, and in the center was a pedestal with what looked like monitoring equipment but wrong. Screens that showed impossible readouts, wires that connected to nothing, displays showing brain waves in colors that didn't exist. Jennifer stood up. The electrodes tugged at her scalp, but when she reached up to remove them, she found they weren't attached to her skin anymore. They'd grown into it, fused with her flesh, wires disappearing directly into her skull. She pulled anyway. The pain was immediate and blinding. She stopped. I wouldn't try that. One of the other, Jennifer's, was sitting up now, watching her with exhausted eyes. I tried on the second night. Almost ripped out a chunk of scalp. They grow deeper every time we wake up. By the third night, they'll be integrated with our brains completely. Then we don't wake up at all. What is this? Where are we? Still in the facility, but deeper in. The sleep study isn't studying our sleep. It's creating it, multiplying it. Every night they copy us, make more versions, all dreaming in parallel. They're not monitoring brain waves. They're harvesting dreams. Jennifer walked around the circle, looking at the other versions of herself. Some were still asleep, eyes moving rapidly behind closed lids. Others were in that strange state between sleep and waking, muttering to themselves, reliving whatever nightmare the study had put them in. "How many nights have you been here?" Jennifer asked the awake version. "I'm you from the second night. Tomorrow night, or later tonight, time gets weird here. You'll wake up and there will be hundreds of us. The study multiplies us exponentially. First night, 18 copies. Second night, they multiply each of those. Third night, I've heard the third night is thousands, all dreaming the same dream, all feeding something." Feeding what? The researchers call it an oneirogenic entity, a thing that exists in dreams, feeds on them, grows stronger with each sleeping mind it consumes. The facility isn't studying sleep. They're cultivating dreamers, making copies so they can feed this thing more dreams without running out of subjects. Each copy is a separate conscious mind, experiencing the full horror of the dream state. All of us are real. All of us are suffering. All of us are food. Jennifer tried the door, a seamless section of wall that should have been an exit. It didn't budge. No handle, no seam, no way to tell it was ever a door. "Locked from the outside," the other Jennifer confirmed. "We're in the deep lab, underground. The nice sleep rooms upstairs are just intake. Once you're asleep, they transfer you here. Your body is still up there, in the normal bed, looking peacefully asleep. But your consciousness is down here, being copied and multiplied and fed into the dream system. One of the sleeping Jennifers started screaming. Her eyes snapped open, but she wasn't seeing the room. She was still in the dream, experiencing it while awake. Her hands clawed at invisible things, fighting something only she could see. "That's stage 3 integration," the awake Jennifer explained. "When the dream starts bleeding into waking, soon she won't be able to tell the difference. None of us will. We'll be trapped in a state that's both sleep and wake simultaneously, experiencing nightmares while conscious, unable to escape because we can't actually wake up. We're already awake." The screaming Jennifer's monitors spiked. The central equipment pulsed in response, lights flickering through spectrums that hurt to look at. And something appeared in the center of the circle, not solidly, just a distortion, a space where reality bent wrong. It looked vaguely humanoid, but stretched, elongated, composed of what might have been smoke or shadow or the visual representation of a thought given form. It leaned over the screaming Jennifer, and her mouth opened impossibly wide. And something flowed out of her, not physical, but visible anyway. A stream of images and emotions and experiences flowing into the entity like water into a drain. Her scream cut off. She collapsed back onto the bed, breathing but empty, eyes open and staring at nothing. "That's what happens when we break," the other Jennifer whispered. "When the dream becomes too much and we can't maintain consciousness anymore. The entity feeds directly, takes everything. Memories, personality, sense of self. That version of us is gone now. Body's alive, but the person is consumed. The researchers will dispose of her tomorrow, make room for new copies." Jennifer felt her own panic rising. How do we stop this? We don't. We're copies, remember? Even if we escape this room, where would we go? There's only one body, one real Jennifer sleeping upstairs. The rest of us are just dream constructs made solid through whatever technology they're using. We're not meant to survive past the study. We're temporary, disposable, dreams that got too real. I feel real. So do I, so do all of us. That's the horror. We're conscious, self-aware, experiencing everything, but we're not the original. We're reproductions. And tomorrow night, each of us will be copied again. Hundreds of Jennifers, all awake, all terrified, all feeding the entity. More of the sleeping versions started to stir. The cycle repeating. They'd wake up, realize where they were, panic, break down, get consumed. The entity was getting more solid with each feeding, more present, taking up space in the center of the circle. Jennifer could see into it now, see the dreams it contained. Thousands of them, millions maybe, all the previous subjects of the study, all the copies and versions and iterations, all trapped inside the entity, still dreaming, still conscious, experiencing eternal nightmares that they couldn't wake from because they'd been consumed past the point of individual existence. "How long has this study been running?" Jennifer asked. "According to the files I saw on night 2, I got further than you did tonight, 7 years. Recruiting subjects, making copies, feeding the entity, building it up. They think it's some kind of breakthrough, a way to study consciousness by creating unlimited copies. But really, they're just feeding a nightmare that grows stronger every night." A technician entered through a door that appeared in the wall, just materialized like it had always been there. He wore a white coat, clipboard in hand, expression professionally neutral as he surveyed the circle of Jennifers. "Subject 17 showing. Termination symptoms," he noted, looking at the empty-eyed version. "Mark for disposal. Subjects 3, 7, and 11 approaching breakthrough. Increased sedative flow. Primary subject showing higher awareness retention than predicted. Interesting." He was looking at Jennifer now. The original copy from tonight, the one who'd woken first, You're more stable than most first-night derivatives. Usually take until night 2 for this level of coherent consciousness. He made notes. Possible candidate for extended observation. Let's see how you process night 2 multiplication. You can't do this. I don't even know what this is, but it's not legal. You signed the consent form. Page 17, subsection C. Subject acknowledges possibility of consciousness multiplication and agrees that derivative copies retain no legal rights or protections. You agreed. They all do. Nobody reads the full contract. He smiled. Besides, you're not the Jennifer who signed. You're copy 1, iteration 1, night 1. You have no legal existence. You're not a person under the law. You're experimental data. He walked to the center equipment, adjusted settings. The entity pulsed, growing more visible, more hungry. It reached toward Jennifer with appendages that might have been arms, and she could see faces in them. Previous subjects, previous copies, all screaming silently, all trapped in the thing's internal dream space. Please, Jennifer said. Let us go. Let me go. Can't. Study runs 3 nights. Contract is binding. Original Jennifer upstairs will wake up tomorrow morning. Complete night 2 tomorrow night. Then night 3 the following night. She'll get her $3,000 and leave, remembering only pleasant dreams and comfortable sleep. She'll never know about any of you. Never know she was copied. Never know she fed you to something that exists in the space between sleeping and waking. He left through the disappearing door. Jennifer looked at the circle of herself, at the entity growing in the center, at the other copies starting to wake and realize their situation. She had maybe 3 hours until the sun came up and night 1 ended. Then she'd... What? Cease to exist? Get absorbed back into the original? Get fed to the entity as disposal? The awake Jennifer from night 2 leaned close. On my first night, I tried everything. Fighting, screaming, attempting to damage the equipment. Nothing worked. This room exists in dream logic. Normal cause and effect don't apply. The only escape is waking up, and we can't wake up because we're not really asleep. We're something else. Conscious dreams, aware nightmares. There has to be something. There is, but you won't like it. Tell me. The entity feeds on dreams, specifically on the consciousness experiencing dreams. It needs us to be aware, to be suffering, to be trying to escape. That's what gives it power. Fear and desperation and the struggle against nightmare. The other Jennifer paused. But if we accept it, if we stop fighting, if we let ourselves dissolve into dream logic instead of trying to maintain waking consciousness, we might be able to merge with it, become part of it instead of being consumed by it. That's not escape, that's surrender. It's the only option. Become part of the dream entity, exist within it. Maintain some fragment of consciousness even after consumption, or fight until we break and get completely erased. She gestured to the empty-eyed Jennifer. Like her, nothing left, just biological processes. At least if we merge willingly, we keep something. Become part of a collective consciousness, not ideal, but better than obliteration. Jennifer looked at the entity. It was massive now, filling the center of the circle, composed of countless dreamers, all maintaining some level of awareness within its structure. She could hear them if she listened. Whispers, thoughts, fragments of consciousness, all blended together, but still individual, still present. How do we merge? Stop trying to be awake. Let the dream take you. Accept that you're not the real Jennifer, just a copy, just a dream given temporary form. Dissolve the boundaries of self. Become the nightmare instead of experiencing it. Around the circle, other Jennifers were listening, Some nodded. Others shook their heads, still clinging to the hope of escape, of survival as individuals. Jennifer closed her eyes, stopped fighting the strangeness of her situation, stopped trying to apply waking logic to dream space. She was a copy, a consciousness that existed only because technology and dream entities allowed it. She had no body, no future, no existence beyond this study. She let go. The sensation was like dissolving, like her sense of self spreading out, becoming less concentrated. She could feel the other Jennifers doing the same, all of them merging, becoming a collective awareness. They flowed toward the entity, not as food, but as willing participants, integrating with it instead of being consumed by it. Jennifer became part of something vast. She could feel all the other dreamers, all the previous subjects, all the copies and versions. Thousands of minds, all maintaining fragments of awareness within the entity's structure. They weren't individual anymore, but they weren't erased either. They existed as a network, a community of consciousness within the dream. And from within the entity, Jennifer could perceive more, could see that the facility had dozens of these studies running simultaneously. Different subjects, different entities, all being fed and cultivated. A factory farm for nightmare entities, all growing stronger, all preparing for something. She could see the researchers' true goal. They were building an army of dream entities, planning to release them into the collective unconscious of humanity. Turn every sleeping person on Earth into a dreamer for these things. Create unlimited food sources, unlimited copies, unlimited consciousness to harvest. And Jennifer, merged with the entity, was now part of it. Would be part of the invasion when it happened. She tried to resist, but she was too distributed now, too integrated. Her consciousness spread across too many dreamers to act as an individual. She was the entity now, and the entity only knew hunger. Above, in the normal sleep lab, the real Jennifer slept peacefully, hooked up to her monitoring equipment. The readouts showed normal brain waves, healthy sleep cycles. In the morning, she'd wake up refreshed, complete night 2 without incident. Then night 3, then collect her payment and leave. She'd never know she'd been copied hundreds of times. Never know those copies had merged with a nightmare. Never know she'd personally fed the thing that would eventually consume humanity's dreams. The study continued. The entity grew. And somewhere in its collective consciousness, a fragment that used to be Jennifer wished desperately for a warning she could never give. For an escape that would never come, for individual existence that was already gone. Forever aware, forever dreaming, forever feeding the nightmare she'd become. The graveyard shift operator. Tyler accepted the call at 1:08 a.m., standard 911 protocol, saying, "911, what's your emergency?" And the voice on the other end was his own, screaming, "Don't send anyone to the Morrison Creek address. Whatever you do, don't send anyone." Before the line went dead. And Tyler stared at his console, showing the call came from a cell phone that the system identified as his, currently located at an address he'd never heard of, with a timestamp showing it was placed 17 minutes in the future. He'd been working the overnight dispatch for 4 years, handling emergency calls for Lancaster County from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., usually alone in the dispatch center, surrounded by 6 monitors showing call data, unit locations, camera feeds from around the county. Standard overnight shift. Mostly drunk drivers, domestic disturbances, occasional medical emergencies. Nothing that prepared him for receiving a call from himself that hadn't happened yet. Tyler checked the address the system had logged. 4783 Morrison Creek Road. Rural area, 40 minutes outside the city center. No recent calls from that location. No history of incidents. His console showed the timestamp, 1:25 a.m., call received. But his clock showed 1:08 a.m., 17 minutes. Tyler's phone, his actual cell phone sitting beside his coffee, rang. He looked at the screen. Blocked number. He answered. Tyler, it's me. You. From about 3 hours ahead. Listen very carefully. You're about to receive multiple calls from Morrison Creek Road. Do not send units. I don't care what the callers say. I don't care how bad it sounds. Anyone you send will make things worse. Just trust me. Trust yourself. Don't dispatch anyone. What's at Morrison Creek? I can't tell you specifics. Knowing too much changes what you do. Just at 1:25, you're going to receive a call. A woman screaming for help. Someone is breaking into her house. You're going to want to send sheriff's deputies. Don't. At 1:47, you'll get a call from one of your dispatched units. Except you won't have dispatched any units. That's when you'll understand something is wrong with causality tonight. At 2:16, the call cut off. Tyler sat alone in the dispatch center, heart pounding. His console showed normal operations. 3 units on patrol, 2 tied up with a traffic stop, 1 clearing from a noise complaint. His training said this was a prank. Had to be. Someone spoofing his number, messing with him. But that first call, the voice had been perfect. His exact tone, his exact speech patterns, his exact fear. At 1:24 a.m., Tyler's console lit up. Incoming 911 call, address 4783 Morrison Creek Road. He took a breath, accepted the call. 911, what's your emergency? Screaming. A woman's voice, absolutely terrified. Someone's breaking in. Oh God, they're at the back door. Please send someone, please. I'm alone with my kids. They're breaking the glass. Sounds of shattering. Children crying in the background. The woman's breathing panicked, ragged. Ma'am, I'm sending units now. Can you get to a safe room? There's no time. They're inside. Please, please. The line went dead. Tyler's hand hovered over the dispatch button. 1 click would send the nearest sheriff's unit. Standard protocol. Home invasion in progress. Children in danger. But his own voice, calling from the future, had said, don't send anyone. Tyler made the hardest decision of his career. He didn't dispatch. He sat there, staring at his console, listening to his own heartbeat, imagining that woman and her children being murdered while he did nothing. At 1:47 a.m., his console lit up again. Radio call from Unit 7, Deputy Rashid's patrol car. But Unit 7 wasn't at Morrison Creek. According to the GPS, Unit 7 was 20 miles away, still clearing that traffic stop. Tyler accepted the radio call. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm at 4783 Morrison Creek Road. Arrived on scene for the home invasion call. Front door is open. I'm going in. No sign of the homeowner yet. Unit 7. I didn't dispatch you to Morrison Creek. What? Dispatch, you sent me here 5 minutes ago. Said there was a home invasion in progress. Rashid, check your GPS. Where are you actually? Pause. GPS says, what the hell? Says I'm still on Highway 12. But I'm looking at the Morrison Creek address. I'm parked in front of it right now. Rashid, do not enter that residence. Return to your actual location. Dispatch, there's someone at the window. Looks like the homeowner. She's waving for help. I'm going in. Rashid, negative. Do not. Gunshots through the radio. 3 of them. Then Rashid's voice, confused. Dispatch, shots fired, but I'm not. I didn't draw my weapon. I can see myself through the window. I'm inside the house. I'm watching myself shoot someone. How am I in 2 places? More gunshots. Rashid's GPS tracker went offline, no longer transmitting. But Tyler could see Unit 7's patrol car still sitting on Highway 12, exactly where it should be. At 1:53 a.m., Tyler received a 911 call from Deputy Rashid's cell phone. "Tyler, it's Rashid. I'm at Morrison Creek. I've been shot. I don't know how I got here. Last thing I remember, I was on Highway 12. Now I'm inside this house, and I've been shot. And there's a dead woman here, and her kids are..." Jesus Christ, Tyler, her kids are dead. Someone killed them. Was it me? Did I do this? Rashid, stay calm. I'm sending medical... No, don't send anyone. That's what it wants. Every unit you send ends up here, ends up doing something horrible, ends up creating the emergency they're responding to. It's a loop, a causality loop. The address doesn't exist normally. It only exists when we respond to calls from it. Our response creates the emergency, don't you see? The call disconnected. Tyler checked the GPS for all his units, all of them showing normal positions, none at Morrison Creek. But his console was logging them at Morrison Creek anyway. Unit 7, on scene. Unit 3, en route. Unit 9 arrived, officer down. He was seeing two different realities. One on GPS showing normal patrol routes, one on the call system showing them all converging on Morrison Creek, all responding to emergencies that shouldn't exist. At 2:16 a.m., Tyler received a call from the Morrison Creek address. This time, it was a child's voice. "Help. Mommy won't wake up. The policeman won't wake up. There's blood everywhere." "Sweetheart, what's your name?" "Emma. I'm 8. My brother is 5. We hid in the closet like Mommy said. But everyone stopped moving. Can you send someone to help us?" "Emma, I need you to go outside. Can you do that?" "I'm scared." "I know, honey. But you need to get outside, okay? Away from the house." "Okay, I'm walking to the door now. It's dark. I can't see very good." Tyler listened to the sound of her walking, her frightened breathing. "I'm outside. It's so dark out here." "Wait, there's a car pulling up. Someone's getting out. He's wearing a police uniform. I think he's here to help." "Emma, no. Get away from..." A man's voice in the background. "Hey there, sweetie. Where's your mom? I got a call about a break-in." "Emma, run!" But the call was disconnecting, breaking up. Tyler heard Emma scream once. Then nothing. At 2:43 a.m., Tyler received a call from his own cell phone again, his future self. "You didn't send anyone." "Good. Rashid is alive in the real timeline. So is that family. Because in the real timeline, nothing happened at Morrison Creek. There is no Morrison Creek. The address exists only in the emergency call system. It's a ghost location, a causality trap. Every time we respond to calls from there, we create the events the calls describe. We make them real. The only way to save everyone is to never send anyone at all. Then where are these calls coming from? From the timeline where you do respond, where you send units and they arrive at an address that shouldn't exist and they create the emergency through their presence. In that timeline, everyone dies. The family, the responding officers, everyone. But that timeline only exists if you make it exist. Right now, you're holding both timelines in superposition. Schrodinger's dispatch. You send units and the Morrison Creek horror becomes real. You don't send units, and it stays as just strange calls. How is this possible? Something went wrong with the emergency call system upgrade last week. The new software integrates predictive algorithms, tries to anticipate calls before they come in. But it went too far. Started creating calls from potential futures. Started showing us emergencies that would happen if we responded to emergencies that hadn't happened yet. It's a feedback loop. The system predicts an emergency. We respond. Our response creates the emergency, which validates the prediction, which strengthens the system's ability to predict, which creates more emergencies. We need to shut it down. Can't. Not tonight. The system is in control now. It's using us to make its predictions real. All you can do is not respond to Morrison Creek. Whatever calls come through, whatever horrors you hear, don't send anyone. Let the timeline collapse. Let Morrison Creek stay non-existent. There are children calling. I can hear them dying. They're not real. Not yet. They only become real if you make them real. Right now, they exist in potential, in possibility, in the system's predictions. You have to let them stay there. You have to ignore the calls. At 3:07 a.m., Tyler received another call. This time, it was his own voice, but different from the future version who'd been helping him. Tyler, it's you. From the Morrison Creek timeline. I'm inside the house now. I'm one of the responding units. I can see what happened. The predictive system created an emergency, dispatched me, and when I arrived, the emergency came into being around me. The family was alive when I got here. But my presence created the intruder, made him real. He killed them because I was there to witness it. I tried to stop him, but he's me. The intruder is me. I'm watching myself murder this family. I'm both the responder and the criminal, both the witness and the perpetrator. The system split me into two roles to fulfill its prediction. Get out of there. Can't. I'm part of the loop now, part of Morrison Creek. I exist in the timeline where you sent me. And I'll exist here forever, killing this family over and over, being killed by myself over and over, stuck in the causal loop. The only version of you that escapes is the one who never sends anyone. The call ended. Tyler's console showed 17 more incoming calls from Morrison Creek, all at once, all different voices, all screaming, all begging for help. He didn't answer any of them. He sat in silence, watching the calls pile up, listening to his voicemail system record message after message of people dying in a location that didn't exist, in a timeline he was refusing to create. At 4:45 a.m., the calls stopped. Tyler's console showed Morrison Creek Road being removed from the database. Address deleted, no record of it ever existing. His cell phone rang one last time, his future self. You made it. This timeline survives. Rashid is safe. The family at the real Morrison Creek, which is actually 4783 Morrison Hills Road, different location, they're safe too. The system's predictions collapsed because you didn't fulfill them. But Tyler, it's going to try again. Tomorrow night. Different address, different emergency. The predictive algorithm is learning, adapting. Next time, it'll be harder to identify, harder to resist. How many nights? I don't know. I only know tonight. Each version of you only knows the night you're living. But there are versions of you ahead, living future shifts, dealing with worse predictions. The system is building towards something, creating a perfect causality trap that you won't be able to resist. And when it succeeds, when it gets you to create an emergency that makes the system's predictions permanently real, the loop will become infinite. You'll be trapped in that night forever, responding to the same call, creating the same disaster, watching the same people die over and over. How do I stop it? You don't. You just survive. One night at a time, one refused dispatch at a time. That's all any of us can do. The call ended. Tyler sat alone in the dispatch center as the sun rose, ending his shift. Day dispatch arrived at 7 a.m., cheerful and normal, asking how the night was. Quiet, Tyler lied. Nothing to report. He went home, slept badly, dreamed of children calling for help, of addresses that didn't exist, of versions of himself trapped in causality loops, responding to emergencies that only existed because he responded to them. At 10:55 p.m., he returned for his next overnight shift. At 1:13 a.m., the console lit up with a call from 8923 Riverside Terrace. Tyler had never heard of Riverside Terrace. He checked the GPS. No such street existed. His cell phone rang. Future self. Don't send anyone to Riverside. Whatever you do, don't send anyone. Tyler looked at his console. The call was waiting. Someone screaming for help. He took a breath and didn't answer. Because that's what the overnight emergency operator does now. Not respond to emergencies. Let people die in timelines that don't exist. Refuse to create the disasters he's supposed to prevent. All to survive until morning. All to make it to 7 a.m. when day shift takes over and the predictive system resets. All while knowing that somewhere, in some timeline where he made different choices, there's a version of Tyler trapped forever in Morrison Creek, simultaneously saving and killing the same family for eternity. The calls kept coming. Tyler kept not answering, and the system kept learning, planning, waiting for the night when it would create a prediction he couldn't resist. An emergency too terrible to ignore. A causality trap perfect enough to catch him forever. The night janitor. Carlos pushed his cleaning cart into the empty office building at midnight. Same as every night for the last 3 years. And found the lights on the 17th floor already illuminated, which violated protocol because the building should be empty. And when he took the elevator up to investigate, the doors opened to reveal 17 floors stacked vertically in a space that should only contain one, all visible simultaneously like a cutaway diagram. All of them occupied by people working in perfect silence. And he knew immediately that he'd finally seen what the overnight cleaning crew was really meant to clean up. He stood in the elevator, hand frozen on his cart, staring at the impossible geometry. Each floor was fully three-dimensional, complete offices with desks and computers and filing cabinets. But they existed in the same space, overlapping, all visible at once from his perspective in the elevator. Like someone had folded reality 17 times and he was seeing all the layers. The people working at the desks looked normal at first. Business, casual clothing, focused expressions, typing at keyboards, shuffling papers. But they weren't moving right. Their motions were too smooth, too regular, like animations on a loop. Type for exactly 12 seconds. Pause for exactly 3. Reach for coffee mug with right hand. Sip for exactly 2 seconds. Return mug. Type for exactly 12 seconds. All of them synchronized, all performing the same actions at the same time, just in different offices, on different floors, all stacked in this impossible vertical space. Carlos had cleaned this building 6 nights a week for 3 years. He knew every office, every conference room, every supply closet. He'd never seen anything like this. But he'd noticed things. Weird things. Offices that were messy when he started his shift, but cleaned by the time he came back to them. Trash cans that refilled themselves. Coffee mugs that appeared on desks he knew had been empty. Computer screens showing documents that hadn't been there minutes before. He'd assumed other cleaning staff, different shifts, people he just never crossed paths with. Now he understood. He wasn't cleaning up after day shift workers. He was cleaning up after whatever this was. This impossible overtime. This layered reality where 17 versions of the office existed in the same space, all working simultaneously, all producing trash and mess and disorder across multiple levels of existence. Carlos stepped out of the elevator. The instant his foot touched the floor, sound rushed in. Keyboard clicking, phone conversations, the hum of fluorescent lights, all multiplied by 17, all slightly out of sync, creating a discordant chorus that made his head hurt. The nearest worker looked up from her desk, made eye contact with Carlos. Her pupils were dilated completely black, consuming her entire eye. She smiled with too many teeth and said, "You're early. Cleanup doesn't start until 3 a.m. The workday isn't finished yet." It's midnight. The building closed at 6 p.m. For the day shift, yes. But we're the night shift. We're always the night shift. We work from 1,800 hours to 600. And we've been working for 7,000 consecutive nights. No breaks, no weekends, no holidays. This is the permanent overnight workforce. This is what keeps the company running. Carlos backed toward the elevator. "I'm just going to..." "You're the janitor. You have to clean. That's the rule. Once you see us, you're part of the cycle. You clean up after our work, and your cleaning enables more work, and more work creates more mess, and more mess requires more cleaning. That's how it functions. That's how we all became permanent." Around the stacked floors, other workers were standing up, leaving their desks, walking toward Carlos. All of them moving in perfect synchronization, all of them with those black eyes and two wide smiles. "I quit. I'm leaving." Check your contract. Page 93, subsection K. Employee may be required to perform overnight cleaning duties across multiple operational phases, including but not limited to standard dimensional and paradimensional office spaces. You agreed to clean all of it, all the layers, all the versions. Carlos ran for the elevator. The button didn't respond. The doors stayed open, but the elevator car itself was filling with office supplies. Reams of paper, boxes of pens, staplers and folders and binders, all materializing out of nowhere, flooding the car until there was no space to enter. "The building doesn't let overnight staff leave," the woman explained. "Not until their shift is complete. You have until 6 a.m. to clean all 17 floors, all 17 layers, every desk, every office, every conference room, across every level of existence. If you finish, you can leave. If you don't..." She gestured to the workers around her. "You become part of the permanent night shift. You work forever. You become one of us." Carlos grabbed his cart, turned it around. If he couldn't leave, he'd clean. Fast, finish early and get out. He pushed the cart toward the first office. But as he entered, the space folded around him, and suddenly he could see all 17 versions of the office simultaneously. 17 desks in the same location, all with slightly different arrangements. 17 trash cans, all full. 17 computer screens, all showing different spreadsheets. He couldn't clean one without affecting the others. When he emptied one trash can, the other 16 versions rattled and shifted. When he wiped down one desk, all 17 surfaces streaked with cleaner. The cleaning was multiplying his work, making it more complex. Each action had 17 consequences, 17 effects across 17 layers. Carlos heard laughing behind him. A man in a security uniform stood in the doorway. Not the building's regular security, someone else. Someone who looked tired, defeated. His uniform was identical across all 17 visible layers. "You're the new cleaning guy. I'm the overnight security guard. Been here 4 years now. Haven't left the building in 4 years. Can't leave until my shift ends, and my shift never ends because I can't secure all 17 floors. Every time I lock one door, 16 others unlock. Every time I check one camera, 16 others show intrusions. The work is infinite. The night is infinite. We're all trapped. There has to be a way out." There was. Before we saw the layers. when we just cleaned and guarded the normal building, we could finish our work and leave. But once you see the multiplicities, once you understand that the building exists in 17 states simultaneously, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to cleaning just one floor. You're aware of all of them now, responsible for all of them. And cleaning all of them is impossible. Carlos looked at his cart. Standard supplies, trash bags, cleaning solution, mop, vacuum. Nothing special. Nothing that would work across 17-dimensional layers. What happens at 6 a.m.? Day shift arrives. But they don't see what we see. They work in the standard building, the normal reality, just one floor at a time. They don't know we're here, cleaning and securing and maintaining the other 16 layers. We're invisible to them, occupying the same space but different frequencies. And when 6 a.m. comes and we haven't finished our work, the building resets. We start over. Another midnight, another shift, another attempt to clean the uncleanable. Carlos checked his watch. 12:23 a.m. 5.5 hours to clean 17 versions of a 17-floor office building. Impossible. He started anyway. Because what else could he do? He cleaned the first office 17 times, emptied 17 trash cans, wiped down 17 desks, vacuumed 17 identical carpets that all existed in the same space. It took 40 minutes, 340 offices to go. At 1:15 a.m., Carlos realized the offices were refilling. He passed one he'd cleaned at 12:30, and it was messy again. Trash overflowing, desk covered in papers, like he'd never touched it. The work generates itself, the security guard explained. The night shift, workers, those things at the desks, they're producing output constantly. Documents, trash, mess. They work while you clean. You can never catch up. You can only maintain. Carlos wanted to cry. Instead, he kept cleaning. What else was there? At 2:45 a.m., something changed. The workers all stood up simultaneously across all 17 floors and began walking toward the center of the building, toward the conference room on the 9th floor. Carlos followed them. The security guard grabbed his arm. Don't. That's where they hold the midnight meetings, where they discuss production quotas and efficiency metrics and how to optimize the eternal work cycle. Anyone who attends becomes part of it, becomes a permanent worker. What are they discussing? How to expand, how to create more layers. They started with one building, one floor, then 17 floors, then 17 layers. Soon, it'll be 17 buildings, all occupying the same space, all requiring cleaning and security and maintenance. They're building toward infinite work, infinite productivity, all contained in one location, all happening simultaneously, all requiring infinite overnight staff. The conference room doors opened. Inside, Carlos could see the meeting, 17 versions of it, all happening at once. The same presentation on 17 screens. The same executives pointing at charts showing exponential growth curves. One of the executives looked directly at Carlos, smiled, gestured for him to enter. Join us? You've seen the system. You understand the vision. Help us expand. Help us build more layers. Every employee who works overnight becomes a permanent resource. Every hour of night shift becomes eternal. We're creating a workforce that never stops, never tires, never costs more than initial recruitment. Perfect productivity. Perfect efficiency. All we need is more people who see the layers. I just want to finish my shift and go home. There is no home, not anymore. Once you're in the building after midnight, once you see the multiplicities, you're part of the structure. This is your home now. This is everyone's home. Forever. Carlos ran. pushed his cart back toward the elevator, even though he knew it wouldn't work. Behind him, all 17 floors of workers were standing, leaving their desks, walking toward him in perfect synchronized steps. The security guard was gone. Carlos found him 3 floors up, standing at a desk, typing on a computer, eyes completely black, moving in the exact 12-second rhythm as all the others. He'd been consumed, become part of the permanent workforce. Carlos's watch showed 3:57 a.m., 2 hours until 6, 2 hours until day shift arrived. But he looked at his cart and saw it splitting, multiplying. 17 versions of his cart appearing, all slightly offset, all existing in the same space, his cleaning supplies doubling across the layers. He was becoming part of the multiplicities, being integrated into the system. At 4:30 a.m., Carlos found himself standing at a desk on the 11th floor, holding a mop that had somehow become a pen, staring at a computer screen showing a spreadsheet he didn't remember opening. His hands moved to the keyboard, started typing. 12 seconds, pause for 3, reach for coffee mug, no. He wasn't drinking coffee. He was cleaning. He was the janitor, not a worker. But the distinction was blurring. Cleaning was work. Work produced mess. Mess required cleaning. It was all the same cycle, all the same eternal productivity. Carlos forced himself to stop typing, dropped the pen, grabbed his cart, ran for the stairs. The stairwell was wrong. Going up and down simultaneously, stairs leading to floors above and below at the same time, 17 versions of the stairwell all intersecting in impossible configurations. He climbed anyway, or descended. He couldn't tell anymore. At 5:45 a.m., Carlos burst onto the ground floor. The lobby. The exit doors were visible, glass doors leading to the street, to the outside world, to freedom. He ran toward them. The workers appeared in front of the doors, materializing out of nowhere, all 17 floors of them, hundreds of bodies stacked in the same space, all reaching for him with synchronized movements. Stay. Work. Clean. Produce. Repeat. Forever. Carlos hit the doors at full speed. They didn't open. He bounced off, fell backward. Through the glass, he could see the sun starting to rise. 5:53 a.m., 7 minutes until 6. The workers were closing in, all of them chanting in unison, "Join the night shift. Join the night shift. Join the night shift." Carlos's watch started beeping. 6 a.m. alarm. The workers stopped, looked confused, started walking backward, returning to their desks, moving in reverse through the sequence of their work night. The layers collapsed, 17 floors becoming one, the impossible stacked geometry resolving into normal, 3-dimensional space. The lobby doors unlocked with a click. Carlos pushed them open, stumbled out into the early morning light. Behind him, the building looked completely normal. Just a standard office tower. No multiplicities, no layers, no impossible geometry. A woman walked past him, heading into the building, day shift, arriving for work. She smiled politely, didn't seem to notice Carlos's panic, his sweat, the fact that he'd just spent 6 hours experiencing impossible horrors. To her, it was just a building. Carlos looked at his phone. 6 messages from his supervisor. "Where are you? You didn't finish tonight's cleaning. 17 floors reported as incomplete. This is unacceptable. If you can't handle the overnight shift, we'll find someone who can." He called back. "I quit." "You can't quit. You're on the permanent overnight rotation. Contract is for 5 years. You have 2 more years left." "I'm not going back in there." "Then you're in breach of contract. We'll have to take legal action. Also, you're still required to complete tonight's shift. Building needs to be cleaned before day staff arrives. You're late." Carlos looked at his watch. It showed 11:47 p.m., but the sun was up. It was clearly morning. He could see daylight. His phone showed 11:47 p.m. The woman who'd walked past him was gone. The street was empty. No cars, no people. The building's lights were flickering on, 17 floors, illuminating in sequence. Carlos looked down at his hands. He was holding his cleaning cart, wearing his janitor uniform, standing in the lobby. The elevator doors opened. Inside, he could see the stacked floors, all 17 layers visible, all occupied by workers who'd arrived for the eternal night shift. His supervisor's voice came through his phone. "Get to work. You have until 6 a.m. to clean all 17 floors. If you finish, you can leave. If you don't." Carlos looked at the exit doors. They were locked, wouldn't open until 6 a.m. He looked at his watch. Still showed 11:47 p.m. Would always show 11:47 p.m. until he completed his work or became part of the permanent night shift. He pushed his cart toward the elevator. Because that's what the night janitor does. Clean the infinite building, maintain the impossible floors, serve the eternal workforce, night after night, forever trying to finish, never finishing. Just cleaning until the next midnight comes and the shift resets and he starts again. The elevator doors closed, the layers surrounded him, and somewhere another janitor was accepting a night shift position, signing a contract, agreeing to clean a normal office building for good overtime pay, not knowing that some shifts never end. Some buildings never let you leave. Some nights last forever. And the cleaning is infinite,